Hello and welcome to the On the RotoRadar MLB Podcast. My name is Joshua Riemer. I'm joined by none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Jared Block. Jared, how are you doing on this fine Wednesday afternoon, sir?
Doing well, man. It's very, very nice out by me now. I think that
Same.
the live totals and uh, just the weather around the country for baseball is like peak perfect weather today specifically. I don't know how long I'm gonna have this for, so I'm just gonna enjoy it. But it's been good to me so far.
Hell yeah, man. Same here. Actually went out on a walk before we ended up both getting our haircuts today. That was a funny thing we talked about before we went live, but went for a walk before the haircut because I had some time to kill and was walking the dog and the weather's fucking incredible. I went out with like my sweatshirt, just like expecting it to be somewhat chilly like it has been over the past few days, but pristine, perfect weather. So it's nice out here, it's nice out where you are, and it's nice all around the country. I mean, you're going to see hitting weather all over the place. And that's kind of why we mentioned the weather to start out, is because MLB is such a weather dominant sport. So we're going to talk about some of those weather spots. It even starts in this first game. Also, have a little bit of a different look on the stream. Hope you guys enjoy it. Got some notes from some people yesterday, and we appreciate those notes a ton. We take everything into account. So we have the FanDuel screen up right now, but I'll show you guys an example. Just like that, we can switch over to the Prize Picks screen, and we can go talk about that. So first, we're going to always talk about FanDuel, talk about what we like in a DFS perspective, and then we'll switch over to Prize Pick, talk about some props that we like. Jared can mention the underdog stuff if there is anything. But yeah, man, it's going to be a great day. 6 games on the docket. It was a lot of early games, but we mostly just go over those evening games, and that's kind of how we roll. So looking to do that here, looking to do it with you, and excited to do it with you. So let's get into it, Jared.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. Just some quick housekeeping. Today's main slates for the DFS side of things start at 6:35 p.m. Eastern. So we're going to start with this first game, Oakland and Baltimore on the slate. Athletics plus 160 behind Waldichuk here. Kramer for the Orioles minus 190 at home. Over under sits at 9 runs, which on today's main slate is one of the highest on the board overall on the day, probably like third or fourth highest. But still, here we are with this game. The weather report for Camden Yards, Oriole Park, whatever you want to call it, 77 degrees with temperatures in the 80s to start out. Winds blowing out to right at 11 miles an hour. And yeah, we like this game quite a bit for bats. Let's talk about Waldichuk going up against this Baltimore team. Finally, we get a Baltimore tout spot, and it's going to be awesome to discuss here because you know how much we love to talk about Baltimore. So, with the Waldichuk spot here, he's got an xFIP of 5.3 dating back to last season. The blow-up potential here is immense, and I just think that right away, I know they might not be the top stack of the day, but they're certainly going to be number 2, and you can make cases for number 1 here for these Orioles righties.
I think you can really make case for a number 1 stack here, man. Waldichuk has been awful to start out the year. Has been one of the worst pitchers on this slate. 7.31 xFIP so far this season. Has been terrible against righties, allowing a low ground ball rate, a lot of hard contact. And we know this Baltimore team is red hot right now, especially against lefties. Adley has a 500 weighted on base average this season against lefties. Austin Hayes has been good. Mountcastle has been elite. I mean, easily like... It's a very small sample size, only 15 at bats, right? Or plate appearances so far against lefties this year, but a 712 weighted on base average, a 900 ISO. Numbers are insane. For those who don't know how ISO works, it's essentially, or no, that's slugging percentage. That's not ISO. I'm sure his slugging percentage is high too, but his ground ball rate's at 8%. Like all these numbers are amazing for these guys. So I think Baltimore is like kind of where you start out today, and you kind of go from there. I don't know. You can make a lot of cases of who you should be stacking on this team, but I think 1, 2, 3 is kind of where you start with Hayes, Adley, and then Mountcastle, and then you kind of choose who that next guy could be for you. But I think there's a lot of upside to this stack at the end of the day. I think it should be your top stack of the day.
Yeah, in terms of DFS, and then we'll jump over to the prop side of things. I mean, it's just very easy to get them in your builds today. You have Hayes under 3K. He needs to be in your builds. Mountcastle 3,300. You get enough flexibility on FanDuel where you can use a utility spot for 2 first basemen today if you really wanted to go that direction. I think that you can also include Ramon Urias depending on where he's at in the lineup. If he's in the top 6, I don't mind that. Even maybe a lower side would be okay too to get some lower ownership there. But yeah, I don't mind any of that. I think that anybody in the top 5 is really good because they have a lot of switch hitter ability too.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a good thing about like guys like Adley, guys like Santander. You don't have to worry about them going up against a right-handed pitcher that'll most likely come out of this bullpen because of that switch hit ability. So, lots of good stuff here. Lots of good plays on this Baltimore side. Let's talk about Oakland and then let's move over to Prize Picks because you can make the case that at least so far this season, Dean Kramer has been just as bad of a pitcher as Waldichuk has been.
Right. So in 2022, the xFIP was around 5.2 for Kramer. It's now up to around 6.05 in terms of 2023, albeit a smaller sample size of around 40 plate appearances. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely been there, right? The K stuff's down. The hard contact to lefties is incredibly high at 58%. Some ground ball stuff in there to lefties, but shouldn't be that much of a problem. He's even struggling to find the strike zone against righties here. So I think that you can take quite a look at some of these guys at the top here. I think that, I mean, you're just gonna find some pretty cheap bats in the top of this lineup. So whether it be Kemp or Noda, I mean, we can talk about some of these other righties too. So I think that everybody's kind of in play with the weather and just how bad these pitchers have been.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I like the Noda play. I want a lefty here. You don't really want righties in Camden Yards. They have that pushed back left field fence that's pretty hard to hit home runs off of. So you want guys who are going to be switch hitters and going to be hitting towards the left side. Noda, definitely a good option. Jace Peterson played for this Baltimore team at some point, it feels like.
Yes,
So,
he
yeah.
before the Brewers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's some upside there. I like this Oakland team too. Like Dean Kramer hasn't been very good this year. There's certainly some upside here. I don't think they rank in the top 3 today. This Oakland team does, but I still think that they're a solid stack that I would like to have some exposure to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody's going to talk about the Baltimore side of things. I think that if you look at the implied team total of 3.9 for Oakland, I think that's doing a disservice to what that could bring to the table today. So
Yeah,
I just feel like they should be a little bit higher up on the board compared to some of these teams down here. So I know they're bad, but they're in a good spot and they're still major league hitters. So
for
there
sure.
still is that. Let's talk about props though, because I think there are some interesting things here. Underdog's pretty limited in this game, and they have a lot of singles and stuff like that. But at least 2 plays stick out, and those 2 plays are going to be fancy numbers. You have Santander with a 7.5 fantasy point number, and then you also have Tony Kemp on the other side with a similar 6.5 fantasy score number. I think that you can consider those. I don't love them, but if anything else gets added over the show, we'll let you guys know. On Prize Picks, though, I think that we can take a look at some of these guys here. I would really like to see what we can do with maybe a Mullins 1.5 hits, runs, RBI. I think that Ryan Mountcastle 7.5 hitter fantasy score is really nice. Anything else you want to talk about there?
Yeah, Adley at 7.5 hitter fantasy score 2. Really like those 2 numbers. The Mountcastle one and the Adley one are the 2 that I want to attack and feel good about. Don't mind James McCann, 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs too. He's been a lefty smasher for his whole career, so the spot would be solid here. And he's going to be around the middle of the order, so he's going to have a lot of chances just to clean up all the guys on base and get a lot of ribbies that way. So Adley, McCann at 1.5, Mountcastle at 7.5. I don't mind Santander at 7.5 either. He hasn't been very good against lefties this year, but we know he was a lefty smasher last year. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I like a lot of these Baltimore numbers. And then we can kind of go over to this athletic side too and see how what numbers we get. Not a lot of numbers here. But if I'm going to take one guy, it's probably going to be Roman Laureano. He's easily the
Yep.
most competent batter out of this bunch. He's at 1.5 hitter or hits, runs, and RBIs, and I don't mind that. But probably not on a whole lot for the athletic side in terms of props. More so, really like that Baltimore side and what that they provided for us over on Prize Picks.
Yep, definitely a 2-pick type of situation for Baltimore players today on Prize Picks. Something you
Yeah,
feel really good about. And then obviously we'll get exposure everywhere else too. So let's go ahead and move on. Good first game to talk about. Let's talk about the next one, which is going to be Boston and Tampa Bay. Right now, the Red Sox are coming in as plus 106 underdogs on the road here behind Chris Sale. Bradley for the Rays going to make his 2023 debut today, minus 124 at home. 8.5 is the total for this game. No weather to worry about here. Tropicana is going to close that roof, or they don't even have the option to bring it open. So let's talk about this Chris Sale spot and the Rays today, because the Rays implied total doesn't really jump off the charts, but I think that some of it is pretty interesting. We do have confirmation that Yandy Diaz is in the lineup today. He was day-to-day with a shoulder, so that was something I was watching for, as well as another injury we'll talk about later on today. But yeah, the first thing that sticks out to me is that, it kind of goes into my BVP article today, which is something I was going to share for free anyway, so bringing it here. Some of these guys really, really own Chris Sale on the Rays side, and we've seen not only have they been just on a scorcher to start the season, but they've done really, really well against left-handed pitching. And Chris Sale, not really the big elite Chris Sale anymore, and it shows. So the xFIP is getting better, 4.27 this season, albeit a small sample size. The K numbers, against lefties, you don't really want to target that anyway, and they're not going to bring any lefties in here. I believe they're going to have 9 righties to start today. So yeah, I'll toss it to you here in a second, but I will just mention that my BVP play that I'm going to share for free is Wander Franco. He is, I believe, I'm going to bring it up again. Very small sample size here for Wander, but there's huge upside here. 5 for 7 lifetime, 3 singles, 1 triple, 1 home run. So
I like it.
He's got his number.
Yeah, man, I don't mind the Wander Franco spot. I feel like this Tampa Bay team is going to be a little bit sneaky. While everyone knows how successful they've been and how good they've been to start out the year, I still feel like a lot of people see the name Chris Sale and probably get a little bit scared against targeting against him. So I don't think there's going to be that much ownership on this Tampa Bay team, but I'm really interested. I think there's incredible upside with this team, and yeah, I like the Wander Franco spot. Definitely don't mind that. Really like Harold Ramirez. I think he's had a killer start to the season against lefties, and I think that should continue here. Has a really good spot where he's potentially been one of the best hitters in baseball this season against left-handed pitching. So
Yep.
the upside is there for him. I like that play. I like the Paredes play as well. It's definitely a solid spot against Chris Sale. Don't mind going Yandy Diaz, who has a little bit more of a track record against Sale, 6 for 14 with 3 ribbies added in there as well. So lots of solid numbers for this Tampa Bay team where I can get behind them, especially against Sale and against a Boston bullpen that just hasn't been all that good this year.
Yeah, you're paying a pretty penny for Franco. I think that Tampa can be expensive, but like you said, they're going to be a little bit more on the sneaky side today. So maybe not going to make cash game plays, but they certainly will be in consideration if the money works out today.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. That's all I have for Tampa, and I'm not pitching Sale today. Do you think people will go down that road? I don't see them doing that.
I don't think so. I'd be shocked.
Yeah. Okay. Pretty cheap on DraftKings, all things considered, 7,400 there. So I just don't have any interest today. I think this is a spot that has immense blow-up potential for him if things go south early. So, yeah, don't have much to say there. I think the only thing I can bring up, never mind. We'll get to the props here. Let's talk about Boston and this Bradley situation. Can you share some light on that?
Yeah, happy to. Did my deep dive on Bradley a little bit earlier today. Very talented prospect. I've known about him for quite some time. Kind of just been waiting to see when this Tampa Bay team would bring him up. Was in AAA last year, played a little bit of AAA this year. In his one start, he went 7 innings and had a win there. Had a really good start. Has the K stuff. He has a plus fastball. He has a plus slider. He has a curveball and changeup that need a little bit of development, but are starting to get there. He's a top ranked prospect, man. I mean, team ranked wise, he's the second best on this team in terms of prospect. MLB wise, he's the 37th best prospect in the MLB. So there's some hopes here that Taj Bradley's going to be a mainstay in the rotation at some point. I think they bring him up for a spot start here only. It is a tough team to go against, getting this Boston offense, your first go at it. But I will say this Boston offense has gotten a little bit cold. Turner's kind of gotten cold over the last few games. Yoshida's been getting a little bit cold. This offense hasn't been what it was early on in the year when we saw them blowing up for 10 runs a game, or that's what it felt
Right.
like at the very least. So I don't know. I'm interested in this Bradley spot. It's Tampa Bay, so I worry they won't really bring him deep or won't really give him a chance to do his thing. But I could see some upside here if they did give him a chance to do his thing.
Yeah. Rays pitchers, man. Like they've
They
been
always
just
work out. They always work out.
they've also just been on a heater to start, and a lot of the pitchers that were in really had really good 2022 campaigns are making strides that are even more impressive this year to start out. So, if there's one team that I want to stay away from today, it's Boston's definitely one of them.
Yeah, I would completely agree. Even if Taj sucks and doesn't do all that well, I don't think they'll let him go all that deep. I think they'll probably pull him pretty early if he's not having a good game, and I think they'll just have to rely on that bullpen, which is pretty plus right now too. So
Right.
hard to get all that excited about this Boston team.
Yeah, it is, and I guess we can go ahead and move on to props now for this for at least the Tampa Bay side. There's not much that I want to discuss other than just playing a Wander Franco fantasy score that's going to be depreciated because of the sale name. And I think that you can take a look at that and you can feel pretty good about that. And also the steal upside there too.
Yeah, I think I really do like the upside of this Harold Ramirez spot. You get 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. I can get behind that. Paredes, you get 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. You mentioned it, the Wander Franco spot at 7 fantasy score. Definitely don't mind that. Also, he has a half a hitter strikeout. I wouldn't mind taking the over, man. Out of those,
Okay.
you said he's faced off against him 7 times. Has he struck out at all against him? Let's
We'll
see.
check.
I can check too.
No strikeouts.
No strikeouts. Still, one thing that hasn't fallen off about Sale's game, he still has a 30% K rate this year. So maybe he's able to strike him out once. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting on to these hitter strikeouts. I took one in a game earlier. We're actually going to talk about it, the Bill Bichette spot. On my stream, I talked about him going under a half a strikeout. But Wander's been striking out pretty consistently. Has had a strikeout in 4 out of the last 5 games. So even though he's been hitting well, I think you can have hitter strikeout happen and have hitter fantasy score happen. I don't think they do kind of negatively correlate, but I still think both can happen pretty easily.
Yeah, okay. So we'll put the Paredes, Wander Franco, and
Don't put the hitter strikeout one up. That's just a throw on the wall, end of a 5-pick type thing.
What's the name here? Paredes and Ramirez, Harold Ramirez. Over 1.5 total base, or whatever that is. Hits, runs. I just call it HRR. It's easier.
Yeah, it is much easier than hits, runs, RBIs. I kind of talked about it. Justin Turner's been on a little bit of a cold stretch, 0 for 16 at this point over his last 16 at bats. You can see he actually just barely hit his hitter fantasy score yesterday, but it's been pretty cold. I think against Bradley, I wouldn't mind taking some unders here for this team, especially for a righty. So maybe an under of Justin Turner, whether it be 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs, or it be under 6.5 hitter fantasy score. I could see that coming through for you. Probably wouldn't attack any of these other Red Sox props, though.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on here. Talk about the next game, Detroit and Toronto. Right now, the Tigers are going to come in as a plus 240 moneyline underdog behind Eduardo Rodriguez. Kevin Gausman, Blue Jays, minus 295 at home. 8.5 is the total here. No weather to speak of as well in this game because of the dome. So let's go ahead and start talking about. Let's talk about these Blue Jays and what Rodriguez brings to the table here. You're going to find that if you're looking at if you've done your homework today and you've just isolated this slate in general, you're going to find that Toronto has the highest implied team total. And it shouldn't really shock anybody. I mean, this season, Rodriguez couldn't really figure it out last year. Seems to be the same story this year, at least to start. 6.36 xFIP. The K rate's under 20% to righties. He at least is pretty competent against lefties. Again, small sample size there, but 32% hard contact given up. I mean, the numbers from last year are kind of getting back to what they are this year. So I do think that we should see a super righty heavy lineup, and I think that the Toronto Blue Jays can have some success today. It's just which ones do you want?
Yeah, here's kind of the problem for me is the fact that you have this team in somewhat of a good spot against Eduardo Rodriguez, but if you've paid attention to what Erod has been ever since he came from the Red Sox, was that he's a reverse splits pitcher. He does a lot worse against left-handed bats than right-handed bats. His numbers against right-handed bats aren't all that bad. You combine this year's stats with last year's stats. He has a decent ground ball rate at 40%. He's not giving up a lot of hard contact. It's only down to 30%. He's under a 300 weighted on base average, which is actually kind of above average. Where he really struggles is lefties. Lefties, he's giving up a 398 weighted on base average. He's giving up a 230 ISO. The ground ball rate's been pretty solid over the past couple of years in that statistic, but a lot more hard contacts too. So I don't know what to do with this team because we run into a spot where they're just very righty heavy as they usually are. And they're not really going to have a lot of lefties in this lineup. They're going to have Varsho, but Varsho isn't very good at hitting left-handed pitchers. So I'm not really sure what to do with this spot, if I'm being completely honest with you, Jared. I think you could go Chapman if you just want to bank on someone doing well against a lefty here. He's been easily the best hitter on this team against lefties. But outside of that, I'm kind of at a loss with this Toronto team. I know they're the highest implied total, but I think that's kind of what I was talking about back when we talked about Baltimore and why they're such a clear number one. I don't see a lot of problems with the Baltimore spot. The only bright side I see with this Toronto team is the fact that Detroit has the second worst bullpen in baseball as of right now. So maybe they get done with Eduardo Rodriguez. You see Toronto pour it on in the last couple innings. That's not something I want to bank on, though, necessarily. So I don't know. I'm kind of back and forth. Would love to hear some of your thoughts on this.
A couple thoughts here. The first one being, we just found out like less than 5 minutes ago that Rogers Center is going to open their roof today, and so I just did a little quick weather check here, and it's around 80 degrees at first pitch, kind of similar to the rest of the United States. So definitely could be a bump to hitting here, and I also would want to know where that wind is. It says 18 to 20 miles an hour, but it doesn't really give me a direction, so I have to kind of work on that as we move on here, but it could be a bump. But anyway, I think that's on this slate where there are offenses where, we'll talk about some of the other offenses that are in good spots, the Rangers, the Braves. We just talked about the Rays. I think the Dodgers might have something, although we'll get there when we get there. Just feel like there are ways that you'll probably end up on Toronto at some point when in DFS construction. It is going to be a situation where I think that you may have to make sacrifices when it comes to the big bats. And that could be, we haven't really talked much about pitching. We'll get there when we talk about Gausman at being, probably paying up for an expensive pitcher today. So I think that there are ways that you can still fall on this team in a good way. And maybe that's a guy like one of the only guys that has some good BVP here in Whit Merrifield. I know that he'll probably be closer to the bottom of the lineup. But he could be a source of salary relief for you.
Yeah, and I would even say that, there's Gausman there, right? But you also, we've yet to get to a really good pitcher, which I'm kind of highlighting in this next game on the screen here. Really like Spencer Strider, too. So, it's kind of hard to, I don't know. This Toronto spot's definitely interesting. I think you're right. I think at the end of the day, you probably do land on at least one or two Toronto bats. But I think the idea of full stacking them is kind of out the window for me at this point.
Yeah, it's a very pivotal point of the slate, right? I think that's the most important part we're trying to make here.
Yeah.
Could be very, very pivoting. I think that I am not as interested in prop stuff here. And when I looked earlier, when I was doing my write-up today, Merrifield doesn't have really much to bring to the table. So just be careful with the Toronto stuff. I think that the upsides definitely can be there. I think it can be. But yeah, I think I would agree that Baltimore is kind of like we mentioned earlier, has a real case for a number one stack opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree. And, even this Atlanta team they're about to talk about next has a chance to even overtake Toronto in some spots. So, I don't know. I know a lot of people are going to view this Toronto team as an easy plug and play, but I'm not going to necessarily agree. We'll stay. I already moved over to the prize pick screen. We'll talk about Gausman from this prize pick screen. What do we think about 43.5 pitcher fantasy score and 7 pitcher strikeouts here against Detroit? A Detroit team that is the third worst in the MLB when it comes to facing off against right-handed pitchers so far this year.
Yeah, well, we know that. I think I brought it up either off air or on air yesterday or 2 days ago. Detroit's striking out at least 6.65 or something times a game. Leads the MLB in that regard in terms of the number itself. They're just bad against this handedness, and we saw them do really well in terms of just being able to hit left-handed pitching. I feel like this is a spot though where you're just playing. You're trying to get exposure to Gausman. I think that on DraftKings you find that a little bit easier if you want to use 2 pitcher spots. I think that's getting to that 46 number is pretty doable for him here, and he has shown that he has the consistency. I mean, I think that like he's good for like 1 or 2 really massive 60 fantasy point games, right? But I also think that he is in a spot where he's just extremely consistent in this 45 number. So maybe I do stay away from that a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty high number to reach. Usually, high 30s is what we're typically seeing from these elite guys. And he's had a good start to the year, so it's understandable, right? But it's definitely a high task. And I don't know, should be interesting. I'd be curious to see what umpire he ends up getting to see if I can
Mhm.
really buy into that spot. Okay, I think we're good here. I don't think I have anything else, unless you do. But if not, we can move on into this next game.
No, not really. I think the only thing I would have done differently off air, maybe we find out how the wind actually affects this ballpark, considering that they spend most of the time with the roof closed.
Yeah, I doubt it affects it all that much. I mean, you got to think about it because it's like the wind affects other ballparks because there's no like walls around it, but like with a
Yep.
dome, you have walls around
Right.
it. The
Yeah.
heat will affect it, but I don't know if the wind will affect it all that much. But at least that's how logical my logical thinking would take it. All right, let's talk about this next game, Jared. We got Reds and Braves up next.
Yep. Reds and Braves. Right now, Cincinnati is a plus 235 underdog behind Hunter Green. Spencer Strider for the Braves minus 290 at home. 7.5 is the total. This is going to be tied as the lowest game total here, and it's because Vegas is respecting these pitchers going up against each other. While volatile, I think that Hunter Green still is a really sharp prospect here, and I know that we kind of teased some Braves, but I'll just give my piece on Green first, and then we can go with this Braves offense. This season, Green's coming in with an xFIP of 4.92. The K rate, obviously, electric to both handedness, right around 30% to both, a little bit more to righties. Does give up pretty tremendous hard contact to the right-handed side of the plate this season specifically, and the walk stuff looks like it's kind of out of control right now. No ground ball stuff on the table here. So is he able to get these Braves to swing and miss, or are we going to run into a spot where maybe it's a blow up potential for this Braves team?
I think there's some blow up potential for this Braves team, man. I think there's a lot of upside, especially for a guy like Ronald Acuna, who we're typically so used to seeing in these spots where he's striking out like 25% of the time. Um, but right now, what we've seen is that he's not striking out all that much and he's hitting the ball really well. So I think there's a lot of upside to the Acuna spot. I think that there's a lot of upside to a guy like Sean Murphy, who is typically not that much of a strikeout hitter. He's below a 20% K rate so far this year against right-handed pitching. I think both of those guys register as guys that I could really see smacking the crap out of the ball today against Hunter Green. Again, all they got to do is not strike out, and if they find one to line up, it could be out of the park pretty quickly.
Yeah, I like the Brave stuff. I think that when we combine when we compare Toronto and the Braves in general, I feel like that's where if you want to spend a pay up guy, that's where like Acuna versus Springer comes into play, or like cross positionally Acuna versus Vlad, etc. So yeah, I think that Acuna also brings that stolen base upside too. So yeah, I don't have much to say about it. I think Sean Murphy's price is really, really solid too at 2,400 on FanDuel. I think that that's a really, really sharp play there. And DraftKings, it's a little bit more expensive, but again, getting clean up in this Braves offense is really a really strong spot.
Yep, completely agree. I really like the Acuna spot too. We're going to talk about prize picks in a moment, but there's definitely some steal potential here, especially because he could just get walked a bunch here. So yeah, I like the Acuna spot quite a bit today.
Yep. I easy sports highlights. I will post some of these when we get time, but we're gonna jump over to the prize pick side of things for this Braves squad, unless we want to cover the other side.
Uh,
Talk about Strider, maybe ever doing
yeah,
that.
let's talk about Strider real quick here.
Yep. Okay. Obviously, Strider's got electric stuff. I know that the fantasy number itself didn't work itself out last time out. Um, Still got you 33 despite 9Ks. I mean, he does have the ability to give up runs, but he also has immense upside. So I think that back-to-back games of 9 strikeouts is something that we can look at here. You're going to get this Cincinnati team that collectively has a 26% strikeout rate to this handedness. I know the top of the order can be a little tricky. I know Jonathan India and TJ Friedl are a little bit pesky, is the best way to put that. But then you have a pretty free swinging lineup the rest of the way through. So I think that there's tremendous upside here again, and he's going to get a bump here. Atlanta obviously is going to be a hot area today, mid 70s, but the wind is blowing in at from left field 8 miles an hour, so it's a bump to him.
Yeah, for sure. And his pitch count stuff is really encouraging too, right? He's getting into the 90s in both of his last games, which is really solid. Could see those 100s if he's pitching really well. I like this spot a lot. I think the K upside is certainly there. There's lots of lefties in this lineup, which he tends to strike out more. So he's going to have that upside. I love the Spencer Strider spot. I kind of like the Spencer Strider spot more than I like the Gausman spot. I think they are very close, but I think the Strider spot carries tremendous upside. And, seeing that 9 pitcher strikeout projection, or I guess line over on prize picks, is something that I want to take advantage of. So I really like Spencer Strider today. I think the spot is elite for him against his Cincy team, and I think there's a lot of upside there.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that they're awesome, I guess is a word, but 9 strikeouts just right out the gate, third game in.
I
I
know.
guess they had to put it here because he's done it twice already. So, yeah, I think that that's in play. I think that the fantasy score is in play. We should expect this Braves team to win. And I think that, I think that he goes deep enough, like you said, with the pitch count stuff to say that there's pretty tremendous upside for him getting the quality start and getting the that sixth, seventh inning under his belt, which I think he could do today.
Yeah, completely agree. I think the spot is really solid for him, and really like the upside with Strider. Um, do we want to talk about prize picks really quickly and end it there for props?
Yeah, I think we can. Strider, 9 pitcher strikeouts. I think the fantasy score is in play at 49.5 over. Uh, in terms of Acuna, usually they're doing pretty well with putting him at a decent fantasy score number to take advantage of, and it sits at 8.5 today. I would like to take that. Let's see what else is there for this Braves team. I could get behind some Austin Riley stuff. Matt Olson hits, runs, RBIs is fun if you want to have Acuna in the game stack kind of situation. That kind of works itself out there. They don't have much else though. It's kind of it. I was expecting something from Sean Murphy, but we're not going to get it. It looks like.
Yeah, seems like it. Yeah, I think that I like this Acuna spot the most at 8.5 hitter fantasy score. I think the steal upside is there. He's gonna get walked probably a couple or once or twice in this one, so don't mind that Ronald Acuna spot if I'm gonna go anywhere. But that's probably it for the hitters.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
let's see
Go
before
ahead.
we leave here. Let's see if
Yeah.
Reds have any strikeout numbers, because sometimes they don't. Unfortunate. I would have loved to take an over
Too easy,
strikeout
man.
for.
It's
I
too
know
easy.
they can't make it that easy on me. I guess that if they gave us like 1.5 hitter strikeouts, I wonder if that would come out to the odds that they wanted to. Probably not.
Here's one
Prob-
more that I think I want to at least throw out there. On Underdog, they have a pitch count number. It's going to sound high, but it's 98.5. Are
Ooh,
you Yeah,
Too high.
I know.
He hasn't
Too
hit it
high.
yet, even this season.
Where would that sit for you to take that?
It would need to be around the low 90s, I think. 93 and a half, 94 base or 94 flat. Um, yeah, it would have to be a lot lower. I would actually
Talk about
probably
a
be interested in an under there, if anything.
Yeah. Talk about an immense sweat. We're not
Yeah,
really a pitch
seriously.
count group, but that would be quite the sweat there.
Yeah, it would.
Anyway, though, he'd be probably hitting all of his props if he got to that pitch count number.
Oh, I'd be
So,
ecstatic if he hit the over of 98 and a half. That would
yeah.
be the ideal situation for us here at RotoRadar. The chances of that, though, feel a little bit low. I don't think he gets in. I would, unless he's pitching really well, he's probably not going to get into the hundreds today.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on here. Got a few more games to go, to be exact. Kansas City and Texas is next right now. The Royals are plus 146 on the road as the underdog behind Brad Keller. And Eovaldi for the Rangers minus 174 at home. 9 is the total here. And yeah, we saw this Texas Rangers team do pretty well despite Jacob deGrom giving up a few runs. I mean, obviously the stuff was there for him yesterday. How were you reacting before we even get into this game? How did you take the deGrom start yesterday?
I thought it was a pretty good start. I mean, I think that obviously there were some hiccups here and there at the beginning, but I think kind of things slowed down for him a little bit later in the game. And I think it was everything that you can expect out of a deGrom start. I don't think it was all that bad.
Yep. Okay. Let's start with this. Let's start with Eovaldi and these Kansas City hitters. Right now, this season, Eovaldi has a 3.1 xFIP. The K rate, the K numbers are certainly there. The ground ball stuff to righties is high at 57%. Giving up a lot of hard contact to lefties. Again, small sample size, 23 plate appearances. But dating back to last season, we know that he has the ability to give up the long ball here. Is this something that we're going to look at for Kansas City today?
Yeah, I think there's certainly some, well, say there's certainly some upside. No, I don't know. I think it's an okay spot for Eovaldi. I don't think it's a great spot. He's faced off against two pretty decently tough teams to start out the year. So, like, I don't know. This is probably his easiest matchup of the bunch. But I don't know. I'm not all that thrilled about it when you have such good pitching. This is maybe a good SP2 option based on the price tag over on DK. But outside of that, I'm not really all that thrilled about it.
Yeah, I'm not either. He can go out and get you a solid outing, but I also think that he does have tendencies to get blown up here. And going from Boston to Texas might be a very parallel move for him. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes, but I'm not going to take advantage of that today. Could see people go here to try to save money. I just see that working out poorly for you. Anyway, though, I think that we can talk about. Are there any Royals that you actually get excited, get up for today?
No, I don't think so. Such better stacks on the slate. We've kind of already talked through them. It doesn't feel like this is one of them, though.
Yeah, we will be talking about these Rangers hitters, though. So let's move on. Talk about Keller here. Dating back to last year, 4.93 xFIP. The K rate was around 16%. This season, pretty much the same. I mean, the xFIP is closer to 5 now at 4.95. Strikeout rate, he had a couple of good outings here against righties, striking out 35%, albeit 20 plate appearances. So that number is going to come down. The ground ball stuff's been working for him this year. I just feel like there's shell opportunity with this Texas Rangers team heating up. The one downside is that I do believe we're going to see, if it hasn't been announced yet, Corey Seager land on the 10-day IL probably because of a aggravated hamstring. He was going to be on a mission yesterday if he had not gotten hurt. So unfortunate there. So they're going to lose a little bit of a downgrade to the lineup there. But I do think that this Texas Rangers team needs to be considered as a top stack option today.
I think losing Corey Seager in the middle of your lineup is a big downgrade to your lineup as a whole. So I don't know. I know they still have a lot of good bats in here. Josh Smith being in the lineup is going to be good for speed, but not much good outside of that. I think if it wasn't Brad Keller, it'd have a lot less interest, but we know Keller's kind of iffy when it comes to everything he brings to the table. I wouldn't mind a pay down option in Smith, who should potentially be batting up high in this lineup if we do get the news that Corey Seager's not going to play in this one. So don't mind him. Don't mind. I want lefties here, so I guess Nathaniel Lowe, but I'm not all that thrilled about it. I think these
Uh,
are just okay plays. This is a good pivot off of everything else you have on this slate. Good GPP pivot, but I don't know. I'm not really on it.
yeah, so 2 minutes ago, Corey Seager officially on the IL.
There you go.
So there's that. But yeah, I think that we should get the lineup here momentarily because they just released that information. So yeah, the projected lineup says that Smith's going to be in the 2 hole. We'll see if that happens. So maybe that's some salary relief for you. Does feel like a mini stack approach.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right. Don't have much more to update on. I guess let's talk about props here. Not interested in any pitcher stuff unless we were talking about earned runs allowed. I'm always kind of intrigued by doing that. Brad Keller does have a 2.5 earned run allowed number. We could potentially look at a Yurfie here in getting yes runs first inning. I mean, those are stretches, but that's kind of where I'd start. And then we can talk about maybe like I don't know if they're willing to put any Rangers numbers up that are really good. Yeah, the only one really is like Semien Fantasy or you do have an Adolis Garcia hits, runs, RBIs.
Yeah, nothing I'm interested in. I'll stay away.
All right, not even the Keller stuff.
Nah, I'm fine with staying away from it.
I forgot to mention this earlier. Oh, they don't have it. Never mind. If they had a Waldichuk earned runs allowed, I would have taken that, but they don't. So
Too
scared.
easy, as you told me.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, though. Let's go ahead and move on and talk about the last game on the slate. And let's talk about the Dodgers taking on the Giants. Right now, the Dodgers are minus 164 on the road here behind Clayton Kershaw. Alex Cobb, Giants plus 138 at home. 7.5 is the total for this game. So, again, respecting the pitchers on both sides here. I know that the wind is blowing out, but like we mentioned yesterday, kind of gets mitigated by the fact that the ballpark just takes out the wind. So you'll see a lot of wind in this spot heading out to center, right center, but it's really not that big of a deal. So cooler game than the rest of the country tonight. Let's talk about the Clayton Kershaw spot because there are some guys on this Giants team that I think could hit him pretty decently today. Well, where does Kershaw rank for you? And then I'll get stuff started here.
It's been a really limited sample size so far this year, but I will say with that limited sample size, we have known this Giants team to be one of the very worst teams against left-handed pitching. They have been awful against it. So Kershaw could really come out here and dominate. It's really just all about, is he going to go deep enough into this game to allow
Yeah.
for a big score? I kind of question whether that's going to be the case or not, but the upside is certainly there. He could get a lot of Ks on this team. I mean, everyone on this team is striking out against lefties. So
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of upside with Kershaw. I also see the GPP spots where you could be scared of it when it comes to that. When it comes to this Kershaw spot, just the fact that it's away, just the fact that it's still a very small sample size, so this Giants team could turn it around. They do have a lot of guys on this team who should be lefty smashers, like Wilmer Flores, like JD Davis, some other guys as well. So while I think they should struggle here, I could definitely see where Kershaw could struggle too. I still like the Kershaw spot. I think it comes really close to that Gausman spot, but I still think he's my third favorite pitcher on the slate.
Yeah, you're gonna have to get pretty surgical with what you like between these two things. I think that there's room in here for both sides, although I think I would side with Kershaw and what he brings to the table a little bit more. And I would say that the odds of them winning are a little bit slimmer than what this says at minus 164. I don't know, just seeing, I know that Max Muncy had a big night the other night, but other than that, they've kind of I don't know. This is just going to be a really competitive game, I think. I think that there's not enough respect on Cobb here, personally. But yeah, I think Kershaw can be on today, and I'm excited to talk about a prop there. But I think you're still probably picking Strider over him just because of
Oh, for sure.
the leash
Yeah, I would agree.
and a multitude of other reasons, obviously. But wanted to at least say in passing that JD Davis owns Clayton Kershaw. He's 5 for 11, so not like the biggest sample, but he has 3 home runs against him. So there's that. So I think that Kershaw could still give up like a solo shot and then really just dominate. And obviously, we know that JD Davis has insane strikeout rate against left-handed pitching. To just put this in perspective, you already kind of mentioned it. The San Francisco Giants, dating back to 2022, have a 30.7% strikeout rate against this handedness for a
Yeah.
full season.
Yeah. So definitely very high. Definitely a heavy strikeout team. When we get over to the props, we can talk about that a little bit. Let's talk
Yep.
about the other side, though. Let's talk about Cobb a little bit.
Yep. Cobb, dating back to last year, 3.19 xFIP, K rates 24% collectively, swinging strike rate at 10.4%. Definitely a ground ball specialist. Doesn't really give up much hard contact. Kind of like the spot for him. Obviously, he's going to go up against the Dodgers offense that I'm not really thrilled to target, but I do like what Cobb brings to the table. It's not really necessary for DFS and probably not the greatest sweat for props either. So I think it's just a stay away, but I do respect the numbers.
Yeah, so do I. I think the spot's actually really solid for Alex Cobb. He hasn't necessarily really done well against his Dodgers team in the past, but he's had an electric start to the season. I mean, the ground ball rate, like you mentioned, extremely high. Just this season alone, it's all the way up to 58%. The K rate's at 27%. His control has been elite. He only has 2.3% walk right now. So everything's been really good on his end. It's a tough matchup against the Dodgers, which is the one bad part, but I certainly see the upside here. I can certainly see him doing well enough to where he could have a good game here. I don't mind it. I probably end up staying away from it, but man, I think that he could actually probably shut. This is going to be a very low scoring game. I guess that's what I'm trying to get to here.
Yep. Unfortunately, I don't know if he wins, but
Yeah,
that would be certainly the nails call if you wanted to go that route in a tournament on a DFS platform. I think that using him as an SB2 option is also probably pretty contrarian too, and I think that he could really get the job done there if he needed to save money. So
for sure.
uh, can definitely buy into that. JD Martinez has BVP here. I don't really know how or why though, and I've been struggling to figure out why, because the strikeout rate's high, the ground ball rate is high enough to where Cobb should induce that. The hard contact isn't anything enticing, but he's got his number. He has some decent stuff here. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I think that's all we need to say about that. Let's go over to Prize Picks, talk about this side of things, and then get out of here, Jared. I have Cobb
Yep.
pulled up right now. Any interest in any props for him?
Um, I think that we can look at. Nah, I don't like the strikeout number. It just feels like you're begging to get pushed there. Um, at 5, and I'd be interested in a Nerfy potentially. I know that I'm surprised they're even giving you this, to
Yeah,
be
me
honest
too.
with you. But you could certainly do that. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. They don't have a fancy number, so if it was like 30, I'd be interested in that. But they don't have much here. I want to talk about the Kershaw one though, because that's the juicy one. 6.5 pitcher strikeouts for him. Does he get the leash to get there?
Yeah, I think so. I like the Kershaw pitcher strikeout number at 6.5. I think you have a good chance of hitting that.
Yep, that's what I'd like to hear. And the fantasy score 40.5. If you're looking at like price structured DFS stuff, you would think that he would hit this number as well. But I understand that maybe like there's probably a better chance of him getting 7 Ks in 5 innings than qualifying for the quality start and winning the game.
I completely agree. I'm right there with you. I was just thinking the same thing. Like, I think you're more likely to hit this strikeout number than you are to hit the pitcher fantasy score number. So, strikeouts is where I would lean if you're looking for a prop there.
Perfect. All right, that's it. I don't have anything to say about the Dodgers.
Neither do
Uh,
I.
yeah, so I think that this last game's kind of a stay away for DFS purposes and for props. Careful with that one. Kershaw's probably your best bet. The Nerfy, I think, is solid, but we've seen, what is it? You told me the other day, if you were to bet every Nerfy,
Oh,
you're at
yeah.
like 30% this year.
Yeah, if you were to bet every Nerfy so far this year, place a unit on each one, you'd be down like this was a couple days ago, so I don't even know what it's at now, but you would be down like 30 units to start out the year.
Yeah, yikes.
Absolutely down horrendous there. But yeah, if you want some Nerfy knowledge, you should go check out Anthony's Nerfy models over on Picket. Anthony does a great job with those. You can go find that at the RotoRadar handle over on Picket. And yeah, that's a model that him and I did together. So we had a lot of fun with that one.
Yep. All right. So I guess final thoughts here. Do you want to just do like pick your favorite prop from the board?
Yeah, can I go to a prop that we didn't even talk about today? Do you
Sure.
mind? Yeah, I ranked this as my top prop over on the stream too. Luis Arias, after hitting for the cycle last night,
Ah,
is at
yeah.
6.5 hitter fantasy score. I think this is one of the freest props on the board today. I was telling the stream, I've bet for so long. Usually when a prop feels too good, it usually is too good to be true. And this kind of feels like it, but he's been so solid all year long. And I'm not going to take the hitter fantasy score. I'm actually going to take 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs because they're going to put him in that 3 hole today. It's a juicy spot. Wheeler's been struggling to start out the year. I love this Luis Arias number. This game actually starts in like 5 minutes, so you guys are going to get it exclusive here on the stream. But I really like this hitter, this fantasy or this hits, runs, RBIs number for Luis Arias.
I'm doing this right now.
Nice. Hell yeah.
You got enough time.
I wish I could.
3 minutes. 3 minutes. Yeah. Anyway, my favorite prop is Ryan Mountcastle over 7.5 fantasy.
Nice. Yeah. I think Ryan Mountcastle, Adley Rutschman, whichever one you wanted to go to, I think is pretty solid. And I definitely want some exposure to Baltimore in terms of getting some upside there. But yeah, I think we're all good. I think we're going to get out of here, Jared. Any other final thoughts?
No, that's it. Really small 6-game slate. And I think that the upside's pretty good here. And again, I think we're very, very different today in saying that, we don't like Baltimore or Toronto, as much as everybody else does.
Yeah, for sure. Completely agree. Going to make us different than the field, which was good. We got different from the field last night. Went well. Just a little bit sweaty in terms of, we definitely got that Seattle call wrong. Or I guess I got you. You mentioned it. You nailed the Seattle call. You were on them from the get go. I feel like I kind of influenced you to get off of them, and that did not go well. So, still was a very good night in terms of props, in terms of DFS stuff last night. Looking to continue that over here at RotoRadar.bet. Make sure to go check us out if you get the chance to. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want. We greatly appreciate it here. But Jared, any last final thoughts? If not, we'll get out of here, man.
No, we're all set. Big shout out to you and your Lakers last night for an awesome game. And got some more NBA action. But yeah, MLB is king right now.
Feel like my heart rate is just getting elevated each time I watch this Lakers team. Fucking ridiculous what I had to go through last night, but a win's a win. I can't ask for anything more. All right, let's get out of here. Thank you all for listening as always. And as always, my name is Joshua Riemer. Good night and good skill.